right. What a bright, lovely Thursday morning, the 5th of March 2026. Na hii mwaka inakimbia zaidi bana. We're already in March, almost a second week. Karibu sana, this is the Morning Cafe. My name is Fred Indemoli. Good morning.
My name is Anne Odida, and March is about to be long. 5 weeks?
Yeah.
About 5 weeks.
But you just come from February, which was very short.
No,
Either way.
February was like 3 weeks only.
Talking about matches, but this is different.
Yes.
Yeah. So yesterday, the EPL progressed.
Yes.
And guess what?
Arsenal
have opened a 7-point gap between them and Manchester City. Well, Manchester City have a game in hand, but they drew, interestingly, against Nottingham Forest 2-2.
Yeah.
Would you imagine? Lakini wacha hiyo.
Kubwa.
Wacha hiyo. Kuna timu nyingine wao wanapiga kelele sana. Jana wanaitwa nani?
Manchester United. Kiburi FC hata wamejiita wenyewe.
Our director today is a Manchester United fan, Emmanuel Inonda. Umia mahali huko, umia. Walikuwa na kiburi juzi. Walitandikwa. They lost 2-1 to Wolves. Wale hawatambui ati Manchester hawatambui. Other results, ile ingine ilikuwa interesting. Chelsea walipiga Aston Villa 4-1.
Yeah.
How about that? So all the top three, the number 2, 3, and 4 on the league table dropped points apart from Arsenal.
Yes, so Arsenal still on top of the table. Manchester United still fighting for consistency.
Yes.
Awako fighting for top 4.
Watu wanadraw na Nottingham Forest.
FC.
Newcastle walichapa Man United 2-1. Liverpool pia walichapwa na Wolves 2-1. And that's how we start this session today. Karibu sana. We'll be discussing a lot of things today, of course. Matters to do with ODM. Yesterday there was a meeting. Wakaendelea kusema sasa vile chama inaendelea. They are anticipating the NDC. And it looks like for Edwin Sifuna, the countdown is on.
Ni kama anaenda.
Kana funguliwa mlango ya. By end of this month, I don't think he'll be in ODM.
Courts zitamsaidia?
Once the NDC decides, there's nothing much you can do.
Oh, wow. Sisi ni Morning Cafe.
So that will make part of our big discussion today. Of course, Mwalimu Sosion will be here, Mesha Kodede, and Fanyamambo Kinodhi. I know you don't want to miss that conversation later on.
Absolutely.
Be sure to be interactive. Join us on all our social media pages. We are streaming live on YouTube at TV47 Kenya. We're also on Facebook, TV47 Kenya, and on X.
Follow us on X, TV47 Digital. My handle is at Anne_Odida.
Mine is at Fred Indemoli. Use the hashtag Morning Cafe TV47.
And right now, do you know we're actually using our WhatsApp? They can send their voice notes.
All right.
Videos. 0793 267 279.
All right.
Let's take a look at the state of the weather. In Turkana, there's light rains this morning and it's 22 degrees, highs of 26 degrees expected today. Kwale, it's very, very hot, but it's raining heavily. It's 23 degrees this morning, highs of 30 degrees expected in Kwale today. Tana River is very hot as well. This morning it's 24 degrees, highs of 30 degrees expected in Tana River today. Let's take a look at Mandera. It's very hot as well and it's raining. 25 degrees this morning, highs of 33 degrees. Kitui, it's 18 degrees this morning. It's also raining heavily. Highs of 24 degrees expected today. Narok, it's raining very heavily as well. This morning it's 14 degrees. Highs of 21 degrees expected in Narok today. So that's comfortable weather in Narok. Weather for? Weather for?
I don't know. Weather for campaigns.
No, you cannot campaign with the rains. It's weather for 2 across board. So that's how the weather's looking this morning.
You know, when you talk about Narok, at least I know the burial of Mura Dikir MP is going to be tomorrow around the same area. So that rain will definitely affect those people who are traveling there.
Members of Parliament, residents of the Mura Dikir will be viewing the body today. Okay. The residents of the late Member of Parliament. All right, so that's how the weather's looking. Let's look at the quote of the day.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Alright, twende magazetini sasa na tunaanza na gazeti la Taifa Leo. Wanasema polisi kula vizuri. Polisi wanakula vizuri sasa. Serikali yatekeleza awamu ya mwisho ya nyongeza ya mishahara, maconstable wakivuna. Sema maafisa wa polisi wa ngazi za chini ndio watanufaika pakubwa na nyongeza ya mishahara chini ya mageuzi yanayoendelea katika sekta ya usalama, ambapo maconstable watapokea ongezeko kubwa zaidi. Habari kamili kwenye ukurasa wa pili wa gazeti hili la Taifa Leo. Tuangalie wanasema nini. Maconstable wanapata nini sasa? Pale mishahara ya polisi na NYS sasa kuongezwa. Sikujua NYS wanapata mishahara pia. Lakini anyway, kila siku, every day you learn. Sasa afisa wa juu zaidi katika polisi atapokea shilingi 345,850 kwa mwezi kutoka 289,000 na shilingi 90. Ongezeko la 20%. Hapana pesa mbaya hiyo.
Good money.
Some good money. Turejee kwenye kurasa wa mbele wa gazeti hili. Vidokezo zaidi, majonzi tele katika ibada ya mbunge. Ni familia na marafiki wa mbunge wa Emuru wa Dikirr Yohana Ng'eno walihudhuria ibada ya wafu jijini Nairobi hapo jana. Habari zaidi, kaunti yalilia shilingi bilioni 1.2 zilizokwama. Mamlaka ya afya ya jamii au kipenda SHA inadaiwa na kaunti ya Mombasa bilioni 1.2. Na SHA ilikuwa imekwama wiki hii. Nilisikia walisema there was an outage. Masuala ya Iran yaanza kumwaga Ayatollah. Iran yaanza hafla ya siku 3 ya kuaga Ayatollah Ali Khamenei aliyeuawa Jumamosi akiwa na miaka 86. Pale juu, serikali kufuliza shilingi trilioni 5.9 katika miaka mitatu. Wanasema kila mwaka this administration will be borrowing about 2 trillion shillings. So in 3 years, 6 trillion shillings. If our current debt level is at, they say 11 trillion. So we're going to get to about 17 trillion. Not bad. Hata tukilipa kidogo tutakuwa tunachezea hapo 15 trillion. Hapo tu hapo. Maswala ya spoti, Liverpool si kitu mbele ya Wolves. Mabao mawili dakika za jioni ya kweza wavutamkia Wolverhampton. Wolverhampton, you know, they're fighting relegation. So that's the worst team to meet at any point right now. Because they will fight with all they have. And that's exactly what's happening to all these teams. Remember hata vile walifanyia Arsenal. Haikuwa rahisi. Haikuwa rahisi.
Karibu tukanyage.
Haikuwa rahisi. Lakini sisi ni nani? Gazeti la Taifa Leo.
All right, Daily Nation, same story, but I really love the headline on the Standard today. We'll be coming to that. It's my favorite. Linda Mwananchi, we smell a rat. Linda Mwananchi wamesema they smell a rat. Fight back, stung by the revelation of a formal bid to transform their campaign slogan, Linda Mwananchi into a party. An ODM faction allied to embattled Secretary General Edwin Sifuna has petitioned the Registrar of Political Parties to reject the application, stating it has been lodged without their knowledge. The group that includes Siaya Governor James Orengo and Embakasi East Member of Parliament Babu Owino argues registration of the party named after the populist movement would expose the public to fraudsters. Resistance National Assembly's Defense Committee Chair Nelson Koech claims slogan evokes paramilitary imagery.
Hii Linda Mwananchi imesumbua watu sana. I think so many people are bothered with that Linda Mwananchi because even the team led by Sifuna and Orengo say, okay, fine, they are not even behind the attempt to register it as a party. So someone else is trying to do it. And even immediately there was this attempt to register the party. There were claims by ODM that our watu wanataka kutoka ODM ndo maana wanaenda kuregister chama chao. Although yesterday I saw the acting SG dismissing talk around anything to do with Linda Mwananchi. But it's this angle by the National Defense Committee Chairperson Nelson Koech that's interesting. Because it says it sounds like paramilitary imagery. I'm sure he's equating it to Linda Nchi campaign when KDF was in Somalia. That was called Linda Nchi. So sema Linda Mwananchi ina sound kama jeshi wanaenda vita. Jamani.
Movement. Watu wamesema wao ndio Sifuna. There's a story covered on page 4 and 5 extensively. And of course, just to mention, the Koech, he says that it is the exclusive mandate of national security agencies, including the National Police Service and KDF, to secure the citizenry and defend the nation. So he referenced Kenya's past military campaign, Operation Linda Nchi, suggesting that political formations adopting similar language may inadvertently evoke paramilitary imagery.
Ati si kazi yao kulinda mwananchi. Hiyo ni kazi ya polisi na jeshi. Lakini siku nalo analinda ground.
Sai, you know, sai kama mtu anaitwa Linda hii Kenya. She has suffered.
You're trending.
Linda every now and then. That's the main story on the front page of the Daily Nation this morning. But that story on pay rise has also been given prominence here. Pay rise for police, prisons, police, and of course prisons officers. And the final installment of a 3-year salary increment for National Police Service, Kenya Prison Service, and National Youth Service officers will be implemented in July, with the entry-level pay for new police recruits set to rise by 44%. This is a very good boost. Good news for police.
For the police officers.
Wanapewa at least shukrani, a tap on the back. State to borrow 2 trillion shillings annually over 3 years. We've talked about that story. A parliamentary report projects the country's public debt will increase by 5.9 trillion shillings to 15.7 trillion shillings by June 2029, piling more financial pressure on Kenyans. And there's also good news here. It's just nice if we mention it. Fruitful Kenya Pipeline IPO fetches 106 billion shillings. It says that Kenya's Pipeline Company's initial public offering has received 105.7% subscription rate, handing the state more than the targeted 106 billion shillings. So that's good news.
All right.
On the back page of the Daily Nation, Matters Sports. Who will make Team Kenya's squad? World Indoor Championship, several athletes have hit the mark, but only 6 spots available. And that's the Daily Nation. All
right, staying with the Daily Nation, page 3 of the Daily Nation has a very interesting story about Alliance High School. And they're talking about former students who will not waste an opportunity to let you know that they actually attended Alliance. Alafu wameandika hapo, I went to Alliance. I went to imeandikwa WENTU. I went to Alliance.
I went.
Which is so true. Do you even keep saying which school you went to?
Well, no.
You went to?
I went to Moi Girls Vokoli. Very good school. Would recommend. Yes.
I went to Menengai High School.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very good school as well.
I went to.
Went to.
There's a very interesting photo on page 28 of this paper. Our CEO is on the paper actually. Mwenda Njoka, anaitwa El Capitan. Institution of Surveyors of Kenya President Eric Nyadimo, Cape Media CEO Mwenda Njoka, and Chairperson of the Professional Practice and Ethics Committee Joycelyn McKenna during the ISK Media Breakfast at the Sarova Stanley in Nairobi yesterday. So El Capitan kama hakuwa amejua ako kwa gazeti, atafute hiyo picha, nimemchanua. Uko kwa gazeti leo sio. All right, that's the Daily Nation. Let's take a look at, I know you want to take a look at the Standard. Let me leave that for you. Let me go to the Star. The Star, Sifuna, back on the headlines. Sifuna Babu lead Senate governor contest. So this is a special one. This is different from the Linda Mwananchi and everything else, but it covers both leaders who are in the Linda Mwananchi. So Sifuna and Babu Wino are on the front page of the Star. They're also on the front page of the Standard this morning. But on the Star, it's not about their movement. It's about their prospects for either senator or governor of Nairobi. So in the race for governor, according to this paper, Babu Owino is ahead with 42%, ahead of Johnson Sakaja, the current governor, who's at 17.6%. Incidentally, there's a push to impeach Sakaja again.
Yes.
Na wamelist watu wengine hapa, Ronald Karauri 8%, Aladwa 7.1.
Karauri anataka kuwa governor, Karauri.
Alikuwa amesema anataka kuwa governor.
Oh, wow.
Moses Kuria 6.3, lakini Moses Kuria ni kama amechanganyikiwa kidogo. Alisema anataka kuwa governor, kidogo anataka kwenda Gatundu South. I don't know. James Gakuya 5.7%. Tony Gashoka 4.1. Alafu kuna wale wanasema I don't know, none other. Wamewekwa hapo wote 1 2 3 4 5 6 candidates. But top Sifuna Babu leads Senate and governor contest. Meanwhile, the woman rep race highly fragmented and uncertain. The current woman rep, Esther Passaris, is not interested in that seat anymore.
Oh, wow.
She's now going for Makadara MP. So, kila mtu anakimbia hapo. Now there's a scramble for that. So that's a big story there on the front page, and it makes the spread on pages 4 and 5 of this paper. Unajua hata Pauline Njoroge alikuwa anasema anataka kuwa ni governor ama ni woman.
Yes, governor.
Karen Nyamu, Millicent Omanga, wote wako pale, hata Jalasa anataka kuwa senator.
Oh, wow.
So that's the main story there. Alafu kuna ingine pia story ya nani mwingine anataka kuwa MP, anaitwa Moses Budamba Mudavadi.
MP.
He wants to be MP of Westlands. You know him?
Where?
Moses Budamba Mudavadi.
That is
you know, Moses Mudavadi is that's his grandfather. That's the father to Musalia Mudavadi. Moses Mudavadi. So anaitwa Moses Budamba Mudavadi. MP Westlands. So a lot of Nairobi stories on the front page of the Star.
Westlands pia imenganganiwa actually. A lot of people are contesting for Westlands. There's something about Westlands.
One, because the current MP, I think, is interested in a seat elsewhere.
Yes.
Tim Wanyonyi, I think he wants to be governor for Bungoma.
Yes.
Yes, so with the exit of the current elected leader, there's usually a big scramble. Because wanajua incumbent has seek re-election.
Wako wengi lakini.
Other stories here, county chiefs trigger fresh battle with MPs over road levy. Hii debate ilikuwa kitambo, sasa imerudi. Ile road levy MPs wanataka ingie kwa CDF, county chiefs wanasema itumwe kwao, bado iko pale. Kenya gets over 106.7 billion in pipeline IPO. Watu walikuwa wamesema this had been undersubscribed, but watu pesa impatikana.
Yes.
106 billion. Meanwhile, pale juu, Zani team gives Ruto 61% score on deal with ODM. This is a team that was formed to take a look at the progress of the 10-point agenda that was signed a year ago. Today's 5th. So in 2 days' time, we mark exactly 1 year since the signing of that deal. Ile ilikuwa na 10-point agenda. So far, 61% according to Zani. So, but tutangoja tuone. Ile dawa za HIV, Uganda and Tanzania now say they will also launch the drugs very soon. That's on page 2. But I thought walikuwa shaandika kwa magazeti yao that
ilikuwa inaingia.
They were to receive.
Yes.
Okay, so they finally received, they're going to launch very soon.
Yes.
And that's the Star.
All right.
Fresh, independent, different. You can grab yourself a copy of this one for only 60 shillings here in Kenya.
Let's talk about Ruto's Panaga, the Standard. That's how the Standard calls her this morning. Sycophant. Is ODM being repackaged as President William Ruto's 2027 campaign machine? As party chair Gladys Wanga openly drums up support for Ruto's re-election, seemingly at the expense of the party she leads. Insiders whisper of a high-stakes gamble that could trade the soul of the Orange Democratic Movement for a shot at the deputy presidency. With her monstrosity moving without breaks, it is only a matter of time before the Raila party faces its moment of reckoning. The Standard has covered this story on the front page, page 6 and page 7. Gladys Wanga has been very, very loud and vocal about ng'ombe kukatwa mara mbili, not once, not twice. Every time she opens her mouth, yo ng'ombe, tunaikata moja 50 to ODM 50 to UDA. And she's always talking about the deputy president seat, not even the presidency. So she she already knows that.
She's very consistent.
This is the consistency for me.
But let's be fair to her, because this debate, I think, was started by the president himself, President William Ruto, even when Raila Odinga was still alive, when he said, and he suggested that probably going forward, the next presidential running mate or the deputy president should be of the other gender. Like if the president is a man, the deputy should be a woman. It's a president who suggested. Then now he started hobnobbing with Raila Odinga, and people said, okay, fine. So probably he's targeting that to attract ODM his way. And everyone knew then it's Gladys Wanga who's going to be deputy president. Or running mate at least.
People are assuming.
People assumed a lot.
Because Gladys Wanga has not said she wants the deputy presidency seat herself.
And I think this is an attempt by the Standard to reintroduce that debate. Remember, it was now domiciled around Mount Kenya, with MPs saying, no, that seat is ours, you cannot touch Kindiki, Kindiki is ours, Kindiki is ours, sisi ndio Kindiki. No, they did not say that. Kindiki is ours. Now, I think that thing had died down with ODM now insisting on zoning and not the running mate position. But the Standard, by doing this, they reintroduce that debate effectively.
Why are they talking about maybe going for the presidency seat? Because this is something that has also come up, that kwani pale ODM there's no one who can vie for presidency, who can lead the nation.
But then again, that would appear to challenge directly William Ruto, who's the incumbent. If at all you're planning for a coalition, huwezi kuja kusema tunakuja coalition wewe tukutoe tuingie hapa.
Unajua coalition imeanza juzi. This is not something that was there when Raila Odinga was alive. So do you agree that with the Standard, Ruto's Panaga? Ni yeye anajaribu kufix.
I don't know. Wameisukuma kiasi. Wameisukuma kiasi.
So the strategy that the Standard talks about, Wanga is actively campaigning for President William Ruto's re-election in 2027, signaling a strategic partnership between sections of ODM and UDA. Analysts suggest Wanga may be positioning herself for a higher office, potentially the deputy presidency, leveraging her influence within ODM. So ni kama anajikampenia. Ni yeye interest zake. Well, ni the Standard.
Power is taken.
Power is taken, not given.
Not given. It is taken.
Now, her moves have created friction within ODM with resignations, sidelined allies, and criticism from some leaders highlighting factional divides and resistance to her approach. Ruto's Panagal. Unajua nilikuwa ninaona watu wanasema pale X. He usually tells Oburu Odinga party leader what to say. Nimeona pale
party leader bana. Munaona party leader.
Wanataka power na power.
I think people overdoing I think the discussions around his capabilities. That gentleman has been in these streets for quite a long time.
Mtu alisema hajakula tear gas. This is James Orengo.
He never went to the streets. All right, from the Standard, let's take a look at the People Daily. And it has a very interesting front page today, very colored, a picture of a doctor there. Why millions of Kenyans are one disease away from poverty. So today, the People Daily steers away from politics and talks about matters health. That story is on page 4. And it talks about why millions of Kenyans risk poverty over medical bills. Apparently, government expenditure in as far as healthcare is concerned has gone down. The various organizations that are supposed to be paying for healthcare, SHIF, SHA, and all this, have their own challenges. So this story talks about the legislative, judicial, and executive challenges that the health sector is facing. And that's the main story on the People Daily. Paleju, on the front page, anasema Gachagua under fire after ethnic remark sparks outrage. Apparently he said something in Kisii. Meanwhile, Parliament wants road carnage declared national disaster. Anasema accidents have become too many. It should not be declared a national disaster. That's the People Daily today.
Business Daily, banks and CBK fight over CS nod for cuts in loan rates. A fallout is looming between the CBK and commercial banks following a fresh regulatory order for lenders to immediately cut their lending rates after changes to the benchmark rate and get approval from the Treasury Cabinet Secretary, that is John Mbadi. This is a story on page 2 of the Business Daily this morning. It says that the CBK has directed banks to revise their loan charges in response to changes in its benchmark lending rate, or CBK, promptly, and the order was communicated to the chief executives of banks in a letter seen by this newspaper right here. And that's the Business Daily.
All right, so those are the local dailies. Let's take a look at what is headlining regionally. We start with Uganda, and on the front page of the Daily Monitor, it's a story that is very similar to one that we had on the front page of the Daily Nation yesterday. So third pupil found dead in 4 days. This is in Uganda. This is the front page of the Daily Monitor. In just 4 days, 3 learners from 3 different schools have been found dead under mysterious circumstances, leaving parents and communities on edge and raising serious questions about what might be brewing beneath the surface. This is in Uganda, Midway in Kenya. Since January, since the schools opened, 8 people, 8 learners have died while in school. And now that was on the front page of the Daily. Yes, in Kenya, 8 have died so far. In Uganda, 3. In 4 days. The frequency is too high. The other story given prominence on the front page of the Daily Monitor is the election of the Speaker of Parliament. So anasema it's Among versus the rest. Anita Among, the current Speaker, is seeking re-election for the same position, but she's being challenged by about 5 other people. So in total, 6 candidates for Speaker of the 529-member Parliament. They have so many members of Parliament, 529 for a country the size of Uganda. We have about 349 combined Senate and the National Assembly, I think. Anyway, so that's the Daily Monitor.
I thought you were going to say it's the rest among and
no, among. It's Among versus the rest. So it's the rest and Among is among them.
New Vision talks about Among. Museveni signs Among and Tayebo endorsement. And the New Vision says over 7 MPs have expressed interest in speakership race. The Daily Monitor is reporting 6 MPs. New Vision is reporting 7 MPs. That's a story on page 3. And Museveni commends CDF on retrieving UPDF history. That's the New Vision.
All right. Let's cross over to Tanzania. And you see, they've been talking about a lot about what's happening in Iran with the fuel prices expected to rise. But today they're talking about the ESC on the front page of the Citizen. What change in ESC funding quotas means to members. Remember, apart from Kenya, all the other members of the ESC have arrears in as far as their contributions to the community is concerned. So alarmed by massive arrears in members' contributions, the East African community is proposing a revised system that would see each member contribute equitably in line with its economic position. Lakini sasa wanasema hivi. Sasa itakuwa ati nyinyi ni wanyonge, lipeni kidogo. Really? Kenya tu ndo wanalipa wanamaliza. What does that say about us? Ama ni sisi tunahitaji hiyo ESC sana. Anyway. That's the main story there. Other highlights, transporters seek safeguards amid fuel supply fears. So the fears over heightened or increased fuel prices, especially with what is happening in the Middle East, remaining on the front page of this paper in Tanzania. That's the Citizen.
I love the headline on the front page of gazeti la Mwananchi. Nasema sintofahamu sheria ya raia kugonga treni. Now what this says is that hakuna mark or signs that a train is coming, right? So when a train ikikuhit in Tanzania, inasemekana ni umegonga train.
Wewe ndo umegonga train. Na hiyo ndo imepita na wewe.
Hiyo nimepita na wewe, so ni umegonga train. So what the people are saying is that kwa mujibu wa sheria ya reli ya mwaka 2017, ni kosa la jinai kwa mtu yeyote kufanya kitendo chochote kinachohatarisha usalama wa treni au abiria wake. Sheria hiyo pia inakataza kuvamia hifadhi ya reli bila ruhusa. Reli na maeneo ya pembeni ni mali ya shirika la reli, na mtu yeyote anayeingia au kufanya biashara bila kibali anakuwa ametenda kosa. So the trains are protected very much in Tanzania. Just know if a train hits you, wewe ndio umehit train. That's the main headline on the front page of Mwananchi this morning. All
right, so those are the dailies, both regionally and locally. Let's take a look at the cartoons from our local dailies. We start off with the one on the People Daily. Na hiyo story ya Westlands, and who's interested in that running for MP for Westlands. So kuna gari hapo wanaendesha gari imebrandiwa Moses, and it's the Mudavadi driving school. So it's father and son, caricature there, both Mudavadis. Alafu wamefika kwa junction ya kwenda Canaan na kwenda Westlands. Anamwambia, son, this way. You are the Moses of Westlands, not Canaan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
All right.
That's the People Daily.
The one on the Standard talks about what's happening in counties, accountability in counties. See no evil, say no evil, hear no evil. Under-resourced county assemblies, sluggish criminal justice, and conflicted oversight. Accountability in counties, that's how it's looking.
Wamewekwa hapo kama chimpanzees. The one on the Daily Nation it talks about what's on the front page. Hizi pesa mpya za polisi. Finally, a well-deserved pay rise. Lakini ile vita iko hapa chini, polisi wanatandika watu marungu, tear gas, wanashoot ndani ya kanisa. That's a cartoon on the Daily Nation. Yeah.
Finally, the one on the Star. Natembeya was acquitted yesterday. What was the case again?
Zilikuwa tu mingi.
All right. Court ilisema go free, go ye and thrive. And that is what has been. Amewekwa ni kama kwa washing machine.
Mwosho mmoja. Sasa ametoka akiwa amevaa white.
Yes.
Ametoka akiwa pamba, safi kama pamba.
Yes. The court is saying, yes, walk free. And that's the Star.
All right. Before we take a break, let's take a look at the traffic situation.
All right.
Roads in Nairobi are looking like this morning, and this is Barabarani Thika Road. Yes, you can already see a long stretch of yellow all the way from Garden City Mall to the Pangani interchange, where it's already red. Na hata wale wanatumia Kiambu Road, that red is stretching as far back as the Muthaiga Golf Club. But further north of Kiambu Road, it's not looking bad at all. Shida tu ni pale Muthaiga. Thika Road, meanwhile, kuna shida nyingine apart from the Pangani interchange pale juu between Garden City and Allsops. There's a stretch of red, but that is on the opposite side. Yes. Immediately you leave Garden City, that interchange, kuna long stretch of red and yellow. So traffic is slowing down. Further north, you can see that yellow extending kule juu, areas around Kasarani, Githurai, all the way hadi Ruiru, imeshikana. The other major road ambayo kuna shida kidogo hapa, Jogoo Road. I've seen Jogoo Road, rudisha tu chini kidogo hapo bas. Jogoo Road, there's a long stretch of yellow all the way from that roundabout, ile junction ya Buruburu kuingia Jogoo Road. all the way mpaka City Stadium, but in between pale Makadara it's chock-a-block, and after that, after the junction ya kwenda Isli pale Shauri Moyo, another long stretch of red. After that, into town, the entire stretch between City Stadium all the way to the Landis Road roundabout is looking green, and then some traffic ukishaingia pale Haile Selassie Avenue. Other major tributaries, take a look at Mombasa Road all the way from the airport. It's looking green past the Cabanas interchange, past Ole Sereni, all the way past Capital Center into the CBD. Mombasa Road not so bad, but ukielekea pale karibu Mlolongo, there's a stretch of yellow there, so a bit of slow traffic around that part. The other road is all the way from Kikuyu down to the CBD. It's looking green. Ni watu wa kule Kangemi, Gitaru na kwingineko. So traffic not so bad this morning. Thika Road peke yake ndio wanakani kama wako na shida hapa na pale. Yes.
That's the Thursday traffic pre-Friday. 30 minutes past 6 a.m.
Oh, right, exactly 30 minutes past the hour. After the break, we'll be engaging our panelists on these headlines. And as I told you earlier, we'll be having Mesha Kodede, Wilson Sosion, and Fanyamambo Kinodia. So do stand by for that.
We'll see you
later
after the
on.
break. Later on, we're talking actually food health. Have you ever heard about podiatry? Podiatry, something like that? Nice.
What is that?
If you are like Fred, then starting 8 a.m., that is the conversation we'll be having. We're focusing on food health, what you should know about podiatry.
All right.
We'll see you after the break.
All right, welcome back and good morning once again. This is the Morning Cafe, State of the Nation, a look at the big headlines. And yes, a lot of discussions around ODM and what is happening there. Also, Sifuna back on the front pages as well. Polisi pia wamepata pesa. Gladys Wanga pia yuko kwenye kurasa wa mbele wa gazeti moja au mbili. And this is what we'll be looking at with my panelists this morning. We're privileged to have in studio at least one of my panelists, Wilson Sossion, who, even before we delve into the headlines today, you were on the news just the other day. You won a case. Congratulations, Bwana Sossion.
Yeah, thank you. I think that was an excellent declaration of the court. You know, the court can give direction, the court can give a ruling, the court can give a judgment, and the court can also deliver a declaration. So a declaration was delivered that what TSC did violated Article 144 to 156 of the Code of Regulations for Teachers.
By deregistering
from the, yes. But of course, the reason that they were advancing before the court could have been extremely legitimate in every way, but how they did it was wrong. So I benefit. I'm the beneficiary of that declaration. Okay. And therefore, that returns my teaching certificate.
All right.
Yeah.
And so that makes it possible for you to vie in the KNUT election which are coming up next month?
Whether I was in the register or not, it doesn't apply to the office of the Secretary General. The plain reading of the Labor Relations Act, Article Section 31(4), is that a Secretary General of a union can come from anywhere. And so you read Article 31, it says those who qualify to contest in elections are those who have been officials, have been. So me, I have been an art official, an art leader in many ranks for over 20 years. So that doesn't require my being in the register. And Article and Section 4 of 31 is very clear that the Secretary General of a union does not necessarily have to be an employee of that trade. Okay. It's very clear because the Labor Relations Act 2007 was born out of a clear understanding that Secretary Generals of union as chief executive officers. So unions should be flexible to recruit even possibly outside the trade. So ordinarily that doesn't affect my candidature if I were to decide.
And of course, people have been waiting for that declaration that whether or not you're going to vie for any position in the KNUT elections. Are you ready to make that, or you're still?
I've ensured that all the protocols for my eligibility and preparations are in place. I've written to the Secretary General, Kenya National Union of Teachers, notifying him of my candidature, and I've made all the necessary. Of course, my union dues payment is up to date. I'm actually the most loyal member of KNUT because I've paid not just up to June 2026, but I've even paid what we call supplementary union dues. And I've checked on the records when I was in Parliament, I did pay. So fundamentally, if elections were to be held today,
you will run for SG.
I will definitely run for SG,
and I can see you actually made it to the cartoons this week. That's a cartoon, I think, on one of the papers, I think the Standard, on Monday this week. And it has a caricature of you there with the court's judgment or pronouncement upholding your eligibility for this, and Asema, I will be back and backing.
Yeah, of course, cartoonists can make fun and can do whatever, and can imagine otherwise. That is their right.
But this is something positive.
The artistry. But for me, I've made sure that all the protocols are in place and requirements for eligibility, and maybe what is remaining for me is to make a concrete pronouncement, which I will at the right time.
Right time.
Yes.
The National Union of Teachers elections are coming up in about a month or so. And yes, Mwalimu Wilson Sossion has been a Secretary General of the KNUT, and he says he might just be vying for the same post come next month. All right, so let's now talk about the dailies today. And yesterday we had this press conference by members of the ODM party. They said a few things with regard to the upcoming NDC. And let's have that story so that it can set the base for our discussion.
A meeting of ODM's National Executive Committee, attended by party leader Oburu Oginga and chaired by party chairperson Gladys Wanga, but boycotted by Nairobi Senator Edwin Sifuna and Deputy Party Leader Godfrey Osotsi, affirmed that the much-anticipated National Delegates Convention is on course.
And we want to take our party forward, and we want to conclude in that Delegates Conference all pending matters that the party is supposed to conclude.
The main agenda of the special NDC, scheduled for the 27th of this month, is to ratify the party's key organ's decision to have Oburu formally enter into negotiations with President William Ruto with the aim of forming a pre-election coalition with UDA, a move that has divided the party into two factions.
We're not discussing about other parties. People are free to register what they want to register. Ask us about ODM.
The push for the NDC comes as a party prepares for a joint parliamentary group meeting with UDA at the KICC on Tuesday next week, where members will receive a progress report on the 10-point agenda amid questions over its implementation status ahead of the first anniversary on Saturday.
But what I'd like to correct is the statement that the 10-point agenda is ending on 7. The 10-point agenda is moving this nation forward the way it was discussed and canvassed. It cannot have an end date.
ODM has already issued one of its irreducible minimums ahead of the talks, stating that it will not allow UDA to operate in its zones or strongholds in next year's general election. Apul Kamau, TV47.
All right, so quite a number of issues around what has been discussed from that meeting. Of course, the 10-point agenda, whose one-year anniversary is up in the next 2 days, I think on Saturday this week. That is one discussion. That demand for zoning by ODM MPs when it comes to parliamentary contests come 2027 is also another one. The impending NDC, plus, of course, the factional rifts amid calls for unity. But Bwana Sossion, let's start off with this issue of zoning. I know the demand ahead of this coalition building between ODM and UDA has been the number 2 position. But now a meeting held this week by the ODM MPs, and they officially made their demand that they will demand for zoning of regions where UDA will not be allowed to go and vie for such positions. Do you feel that this could be a problem in the run-up, or at least in the negotiations for the coalition?
It is not going to be a problem. It is going to be one of the factors to guide the formation of the coalition. And it's not going to be new. It has already been respected in the previous by-elections. Because you remember, UDA withdrew their candidate in Magarini, and left Kasipul and is it to Kenya? No, not to Kenya, for ODM. And ODM did not field a candidate in Malaba, did not field a candidate in Bere North, did not field a candidate in Baringo, did not field a candidate in Banisa, and did not field a candidate in Isiolo. So naturally, the traditional strongholds of the two parties will not be affected once the coalition comes in. So what ODM are pronouncing is a fact of statement that is going to guide the agreements. I don't think ODM will even come and field a candidate in Bomet Central constituency in Bomet. It is not possible. It will be UDA. And I don't think UDA is going to field a candidate, say, in Ugenya. I don't think it...
There are zones that are considered probably battle grounds, places like the coast, and even some parts of Western Kenya, where ODM has predominantly been the biggest party for decades. Now we're seeing UDA making inroads there. Are you saying that...
No, I would want to believe I would want to believe that this does not mean there will be a distinct electric boundaries between ODM zones and UDA zones. There would definitely be overlapping zones where we have mixed membership of UDA and ODM. It would be undemocratic to deny those people the opportunity to exercise their democratic rights. So there might be zones which are democratically battleground zones.
Where both parties will field candidates.
Both parties can field candidates. It might be possible to arrive at that, but of course, we cannot preempt and we cannot predict the nature of the infrastructure and the agreement that can be done. You know, sometimes parties can conduct an opinion poll in a constituency that say, for example, a higher constituency, there is a presence of ODM and UDA, but through a scientific survey, you can estimate that or establish that ODM here has got 60% support and UDA has got 40%. And the parties can mutually agree that instead of UDA fielding, let's leave it to ODM. So there will be a lot of scientific tools that will be applied to bring harmony, to ensure that voters are not disenfranchised and also the parties are not affected, because a strong ODM in the 14th parliament together with a strong UDA in the 14th parliament will be a very good foundation for the broad-based government. And you know, the broad-based government will be engaging in serious business in the last 5 years of the term of President William Ruto.
And even to continue with this conversation, I'd like to invite Meshach Odede into the set. Karibu sana Bwana Odede. Bwana Odede is a social and political commentator and also a member of the ODM party, which is demanding for zoning. But yes, Bwana Sosion, you were finishing your contribution on that.
So fundamentally, the statement that was made by ODM yesterday is an administrative fact and a parameter that will guide the establishment of the coalition. And of course, it is what has been practiced in the by-elections, and it will be practiced in any by-election that will ensue before 2027. Yes. And it is what will be practiced on the 10th of August, because respect for one another as parties in a coalition is key. And it will not be right to go and overturn the party or ruffle a party you are together within a coalition in a tradition.
Don't you think that there will be so many people who will feel disenfranchised if such an agreement is done? For example, the UDA Secretary General is interested in the gubernatorial race in Mombasa, for example, where the ODM party leader is currently governor and is eligible for a second term. That has been considered an ODM zone. Yet UDA has always been interested in such
If a decision is arrived through organs of both parties, that decision will be binding. And that decision shall have nothing to do with personal interest of individuals, but the interest of the party, the parties in the coalition, and the interest of the country. So there are decisions that are taken. You may not like it, but you'll have to live with it, because it's a decision that is meant to strengthen the coalitions. And of course, in such a coalition arrangement, there are many opportunities and roles.
But there will be casualties.
That individuals, of course, there are casualties in an agreement.
Okay.
When people agree and they come together, those who don't believe in that coalition will definitely dissent. But even if they dissent, they will be very weak voices and they will be inconsequential.
All right. Let's welcome Bwana Odede into this conversation. But I want to look at the other side of this demand for zoning.
Yes.
That ODM, the real ODM under Raila Odinga would not have been concerned about saying that we have to protect these regions. They were open to elections anywhere, anytime, and they would run for any elective seat in any given area. But now, don't you think that by demanding zoning and saying some regions should be left to us, UDA should not come in here, that's an expression of weakness, even ahead of this coalition building?
Thank you, Fred. I mean, some people say so, just like you are saying. But there are two things about this zoning thing. One, from the experiences of the past elections, especially, I think, election of 2017, ODM, among other members of that coalition, learned some of these lessons practically. For example, in Langata constituency, you remember when Nixon Korir came with, is it Jubilee? Wiper had a candidate, ODM had a candidate, and Ford Kenya had a candidate in Langata, and they all garnered substantial amount of votes. And then you realize Jubilee won Langata, which they would never have won traditionally, given the history or the historical background of elections in Langata constituency since it was founded. And some of them are also spread across areas where ODM has always been the party of of choice for the people. So it is possible that Right Honorable the late Raila Amolo Odinga may not have cared about such, but now the members of the party and the leadership of the party think it is this would be friendly fire, but sometimes friendly fire also burn and possibly kills if the burn is greater. So ODM is just being cautious about the coalition, not as ODM individual party, because again, there are places where you're likely, if you look at the numbers clearly, Fred, you will realize that regions like Kisii, for example, Raila has been winning the vote in Kisii. But the margin tells you that if you go and divide this within the same coalition, you are likely or you surely will go and lose those seats. You will realize that there are places like Mombasa you have mentioned where Secretary General of UDA comes from. The vote that we came from in 2022, you will realize that William Ruto as a presidential candidate had something like 130-something thousand, and Raila has 211,000, somewhere around there. So that vote, if you divide the other coalition again, because here Raila had Kalonzo, Martha, a few others in their coalition, if they were to field a candidate for gubernatorial, which the vote looks more like the presidential vote in that particular county, they surely will go and lose that seat. So ODM is not doing this just for ODM, but for the coalition. For our coalition to go and have majority in parliament, there are places where we must sacrifice some other things.
Would indeed be neater than that to have this coalition field a joint coalition candidate? Yeah, instead of having the parties deciding, okay, ODM is out of this one, UDA comes in.
But in terms of yes, it is possible to do that, but through the individual constituent parties. Take, for example, say, Kisii County. Say the majority of the residents and voters are ODM. The governor is ODM. So the governor, who is the deputy party leader of ODM, will be the joint coalition candidate for that matter, automatically. So that means UDA may not field a governor for that matter in Kisii County, and the ODM governor will continue being the candidate, and it will be cascaded across in that manner. That means the architecture of building a coalition matters most how you agree on the approach to the ballot box in all the elective seats, from MCAs to members of parliament to governors, senators, and women representatives. So it has to be a tool that enhances harmony. Okay. It cannot be a tool that disrupts. But and of course, from the liberal agreement, there are those who believe in liberal views that go, field your candidates, we have no problem.
Isn't that the same confusion we saw in Azimio, that while the presidential candidate is a joint coalition candidate, all the other parties are free to field candidates anywhere, and then people go to parliament, then parties feel they can move out of this coalition and go across the other side. Don't you think that will be fomenting a similar problematic coalition after the elections?
Okay, either way there has to be some problems, Fred. But the problem of one coalition filling candidates anyhow without minding whether they will win this seat is much bigger when it comes to the time now Parliament is on. Because that is how UDA, for example, got majority of the members they have in this House, even though the Azimio coalition at that particular time looked more viable because of the two leaders, Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, leading that coalition. It looked at that particular time that they are going to sweep. But then, like I have told you, there are places where your candidate wins with 1,000 votes against candidates who probably have got more votes if they were to be put together. So I think either way, there has to be readiness of bending backwards and forward where necessary. But I don't think it is going to be all over. I think they have statistics which will show which areas to actually do this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But there's also a challenge here because as a coalition is being built now, they're looking at the strengths in Parliament now, currently. ODM has about 85 members, UDA about 114 upwards, around there. Then, okay, fine, they go into a coalition. Then after the elections, probably if they're successful, they form government, then you realize that ODM has reduced significantly the number of MPs, probably to about 30. I'm just saying. And probably UDA has more members. Doesn't that then shift the dynamics again for the coalition? That now they demand the ODM's position. If at all your numbers reduce, then even your negotiation about what's ile ng'ombe wanasema ikatwe katikati italeta shida pia.
Numbers are in two areas. There are numbers for the presidential vote, and then there are numbers of the members of parliament. So it depends on those who will go on this table to negotiate. You may negotiate based on the numbers for the presidential vote, because that is the most important vote again. Because if you go and get the majority in terms of members of parliament and then you lose president, then whatever you negotiated again is zero, because the person who organizes government is the president. So if they go and negotiate based on just one set of numbers, then it is a loss either way. But if they negotiate both on numbers of MPs, senators, and then numbers of the presidential vote, then there is always something to win at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. That's how I look at it.
Of course, that's one of the biggest contention, points of contention between as UDA and ODM continue their coalition building talks. ODM now insisting that as they do this, places where currently they have ODM members of parliament should be left for ODM. But that UDA should not fill candidates in those constituencies. I don't know how this one will work.
There is something, Fred, I know probably many people may not want to talk about that. But again, this is politics. It's not much of a relationship of love and things like that. Even the people who are working together right now, put together, it is because the ODM team were loyal to the late Raila Amolo Odinga, and the UDA team are loyal to President William Ruto. So it is a situation which in the other side of the world, young people call situationship. Mm-hmm. It's not a relationship built on love. Right. So it means even within, let me say, I'm coming from Migori. There are traditional supporters of President William Ruto in Migori who supported him even during 2022. They are not much in love with the Raila supporters or ODM members in Migori. So if you leave them to fight, then there are higher chances, or them losing, both of them losing is assured, if the united opposition have got a better or a stronger candidate in that locality. Yeah. So it's not going to be comfortable for everyone. But whatever is, just like political parties now, my party ODM have taken a decision as a party. It might not be comfortable with some of the people or members, including MPs, including SG. Right. But that is the position the party has taken.
ODM still remains, we're about to take a short break, but when we come back, we'll continue this discussion about ODM and the different tangents that the papers have taken. Of course, Gladys Wanga on the front page of the Star today. Also Sifuna and the countdown towards the NDC of this party. Next week on Tuesday, there will be a joint ODM UDA parliamentary group meeting. Probably this will come up as well.
Yeah.
After the break, we'll be inviting to the set Fanyamambo Kinodhia, who's a lawyer and political commentator, also an aspirant, as we continue with this discussion. You're watching Morning Cafe. All right, good morning and welcome back. You're watching Morning Cafe on TV 47 with me, Freddie Ndimuli. We continue looking at the headlines and the big discussions, politically, of course, in and around Kenya. And just before the break, we were talking about the demand for zoning with Mwalimu Sosion and Bwana Mesha Kodede. Allow me to welcome Fanyamambo Kinodhia into this conversation. Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
It's good to have you here. Yes.
Yes.
Before we even move to the issue about the 10-point agenda, whose anniversary comes up in 2 days' time, there was that discussion around the demand for zoning by ODM. And do you think it's feasible that in a coalition such as the one that they're talking about, ODM and UDA, and that's what we're considering, that you could actually make a demand that the other party stays away from your strongholds in this day and age when there are places like the coast region and Western Kenya, which have been thrown into a spin, especially following the demise of Raila Odinga?
Parties will always make demands for zoning because they feel they want to protect their numerical strength. And that is going to happen everywhere. I believe even in the United Opposition, that is going to happen. Parties will be saying, look here, traditionally this has been our place, do not field candidates. Traditionally this has been our place, do not field candidates. But UDA is known for bad manners because even in the by-elections that have happened, UDA has been seen to field candidates in West and everywhere. They have such a high appetite for political party seats.
Hold that thought, because it's a technical issue we're trying to sort out. But probably coming back to Bwana Sosion, I remember just before the break you wanted to say something about zoning.
Yeah, it was a question on pre-election agreements, the outcome of elections, and whether the agreements will change. I think the law is clear. The Political Parties Act is very clear. Once you agree on a pre-election agreement, you can choose to live with it or to vary it after election. But I don't think the spirit of the broad-based coalition is to tamper with an agreement that has been arrived at. And I know the president to be very, very firm and religious on agreements. So that right now the parameters that will be used to arrive at the coalition will be before the election. And what is agreed upon will be respected after the election. Because once the agreements are in place, whether it's about power sharing, whether it's about zoning, then what remains is for parties to work together.
But the reality will have changed.
And for parties to work together and deliver and deliver in the elections. Once there is delivery in the elections, then the next thing will be implementing the agreements as it is. And I don't think it is right to shortchange members of a coalition.
Even if their parliamentary strength is much reduced after the election?
No, you don't do that. You don't do that. It's not right. The thing is, you cannot be scientifically accurate that ODM after election will deliver 90 seats and UDA will deliver 145 seats. You cannot be accurate. There will be certain variations in terms of numbers based on the reality of facts of voters and what will happen at the ballot. That notwithstanding, it should not tamper with the principal points of agreements in a coalition. So that one, if we talk of predicting, using the numbers to vary the agreement after election, I don't think that is very deceitful.
But this must be the concern within ODM circles, that if at all their numbers are reduced significantly at the election, that could affect even the pre-election agreement that they may have signed with the UDA.
No, it actually depends on what that pre-election agreement says, because this is like a legal document. If you are having this agreement now, it is possible that such are not clauses that you leave in darkness. You put it right there, that in a situation where this happens, this is what we are going to do. So if the pre-election agreement says this is the numbers that you need to get, then that is what the agreement says. But if the agreement does not say that, it is not possible to bring it after election to start a new discussion, because that will now be post-election agreement, not following the pre-election agreement. So it's like somebody has moved from the agreement. But ODM is in a situation right now, and the situation is Jacom left ODM in the hands of people who probably may not have seen themselves leading this party in this coming election. Nobody knew Jacom would die. And so all of them are being looked at by members of the party, that are you going to maintain the party in terms of numbers and strength? And I think it is okay. Anyone in their shoes would want to protect as much as possible the zones that ODM had been winning, the seats that ODM had been winning, including Nairobi, so that it is not seen that immediately Jacom died, ODM as a party has already lost all its bases, whether to a friendly fire or to opposition on the other side. But it is worse to lose that within your coalition. It would be necessary to discuss such on the table and say,
in case this happens.
In case this happens, then how do we move forward with regards to what we need in terms of numbers? But again, there is something we have been forgetting here. There is the other side of the united opposition. Probably they will be looking at where there are loopholes for them to also get as much numbers as possible. Just the same way ODM and UDA are organizing themselves, they are also hoping and wishing that when they go to a constituency, they will find DCP has a candidate, Wiper has a candidate, all the political parties in that arrangement has a candidate. And so when they rally their vote behind one candidate in the coalition broad-based, then they get to win the seats, even the ones which were not traditionally supposed to be theirs. And the only thing is, even the media houses have decided not to discuss the other side in terms of that same arrangement, but you are discussing ODM more.
They made the demand.
Because the demand from where? When we saw the Mbeere, we realized that the DCP candidate, the DCP party leader left United States to come for that the by-election, only not to fill the candidate in Mbeere.
The reason why we're discussing this, ODM party came out.
But no media house wants to discuss that. We want to discuss the proposal of ODM on the table.
Because it is current. Bwana Fanyamambo, yes, I cut you short, unfortunately, right in the middle of your contribution. Go ahead.
The biggest concern for ODM should be that William Ruto does not even believe in the coalition between themselves and ODM. He was in my constituency 2 days ago, and he said, nimesikia kuna watu wanataka power, sijui ni power gani wanataka. He actually made a mockery of ODM. He made a mockery of the top leadership in ODM. And he was laughing at them and wondering what power they are looking for. Because from where he sat, he's already dissipated that party. He's already finished the party. To him, there is nobody within the power party who's got the strength to actually come and make any demands to William Ruto. That's exactly what he's telling them. He's telling them, you're making demands as who? If he cannot heed to the demand for tunataka power, what makes you think William Ruto is going to listen to you when you're saying that you're going to exchange? ODM has lost this before they begin. And the reason they lost it is not because ODM is bad. It's because there are few greedy elements within ODM who only cared so much about their own stomachs, they forgot the ideals that BAMBA fought for. If ODM had been negotiating from a point of, look here, we are not even interested in this government. You're the one who called us. And we could go back to the streets, or we could do this, or we could stay away from government and we shall have a presidential candidate. William Ruto would listen to them. But if you're already too willing to be swallowed by this new coalition, you're already offering yourself before you are even asked, then you lose your value. Yes. And in the eyes of William Ruto, ODM has lost value. To be honest, these are not equal coalition partners coming together the way they were when BAMBA was alive. This is one president looking at ODM and laughing down at them seriously and saying, you guys, you have no choice but to work with me. But having said that, I'd like to say that ODM is going to seriously lose seats in Nairobi. There was something called the Kalonzo factor that people tend to wish away. And I can tell you every single MCA who was elected in Nairobi on an ODM ticket benefited immensely from the votes that Kalonzo Musyoka brings to them here in Nairobi. Any person within ODM who has been elected as an MCA or an MP within Nairobi also benefited immensely from the votes that come from people from the Gusii region who are living in Nairobi and the people who come from the Western region who are living in Nairobi.
those are parts of ODM that are no longer there. There used to be an ODM that sisi wenyewe tulikuwa tunaheshimu sana. Myself, I was in Azimio, and I keep saying, and I worked very closely with ODM, and I loved and respected Raila Amolo Odinga. And I can tell you, there was ODM that had the whole of Nyanza, it had the whole of Gusii region, it had the whole of Western, it commanded the whole of Coast, it commanded a big and significant part of Nairobi. In fact, ODM was always leading in Nairobi. Now, the president is taking an ODM that is devoid of Gusii Nyanza, an ODM that is devoid of Western, an ODM that is struggling in Coast. You saw they had that Linda Grounds rally there, and how much money they were giving out, and how horribly they struggled. Mpaka Oscar Sudi mwenyewe anakuja anasema nyinyi mnatupatia ODM yenye haina watu, Sifuna ameenda na watu. And when you hear Oscar Sudi saying that verbatim, not hiding, then it tells you those are conversations they are having within government. That tumepewa ODM ambayo ni nusu na haina what we were looking for. Because politics, unlike football, you know football, if you buy Messi, he comes with a skill and he'll score goals for you. It is not the same as in politics. You can buy a player in politics, but he doesn't come with his supporters. Now they've got an ODM that did not come with the people, and that's the problem they're having to deal with.
You mentioned something very interesting, and I think that is what we should go to next. The fact that ODM appears to be negotiating on a different level right now. When Raila Odinga was negotiating for the broad-based arrangement, everything was based on the 10-point agenda. But it would appear, and from the story we saw, that communication on this 10-point agenda is a bit confused, especially coming from ODM. There are elements within the party hierarchy that feel that they should no longer pursue that line. Do you agree that probably, even as we mark the anniversary of the broad-based arrangement and the signing of this 10 points MOU, that probably ODM have lost the plot when it comes to negotiating? And
I wonder why the media really should spend a lot of energy and time in trying to portray that ODM is weak and is getting weaker. I don't think that is the right thing to do. Raila Odinga died. We all can die, and we shall die at some point anyway. We shall leave families behind. We shall leave institutions behind. They will struggle to get their footing. And I think ODM is a party, we must respect it, the work it has done in midwifing democracy in this country. And whether you are a member of ODM or not, I think it is good we wish ODM well in its endeavors. And what ODM is pursuing is not anything new. It is a lot of work that Raila Odinga laid a lot of groundwork. And in fact, the 10-point agenda bears the signature of Raila Odinga. And I think the leadership of ODM, as is currently, have done a tremendous job of maintaining a strong philosophical position, even with internal dissent. And the 10-point agenda, when there is a committee that is presiding over and has generated a report of the 10-point agenda. And that report is not only for ODM, it is for the two parties. It is between the two parties. And I think, Fred, let us separate individuals from institutions. The fact that William Ruto signed on behalf of UDA, it does not mean it belongs to William Ruto. It binds the party membership, and it binds the party itself. And whether William Ruto is present or absent, that agreement remains in force. The same case with ODM. There is a report on the progress of implementation of the 10-point agenda. And that progress report will be tabled before the joint parliamentary group on Tuesday. Yesterday, we saw the parliamentary group of ODM, which is influential. Those are elected members of parliament of ODM. And they are at liberty to take decisions and guide the party. Yes. And they've done so very well, even by talking about the zoning aspect, which is going to be a key parameter. The other thing is the 10-point agenda, which they will be brainstorming on Tuesday.
Is that a fact?
And the chair of the committee was very clear that when the report is tabled, it will not mean the end of the 10 points. All these 10 points are key issues that affect the nation that will need to be implemented even beyond.
It is a year later since this document was signed. And the feeling, and what Fanyamambo was saying is that this probably should have been, he did not mention the 10-point agenda, but he said that probably the negotiation for the coalition should be based on something else, probably what Raila Odinga stood for. He's the one who negotiated for this MOU. Is it still feasible for ODM to use this 10-point agenda as a negotiating platform, or should they abandon it and move on to other things? Ng'ombe, ikatwe nusu, zoning and other things, forget about the 10-point agenda.
Let's be factual. The 10-point agenda are not issues that have just started in the reign of President William Ruto. Because, for example, we are talking about justice to the victims of police brutality. Are you going to tell me that police brutality is an issue that came with Kenya Kwanza government? During Uhuru Kenyatta, we do not talk about police brutality, we do not talk about those deaths. That is why the 10-point agenda talks about way back from 2017. And for us, some of us who have been in ODM longer, we could even take it all the way back further than 2017. So to narrow it down to determine the pre-election coalition agreement is wrong. Because even as it is, the working arrangement of Raila Odinga, the late, and William Ruto started before this 10-point agenda. Remember, when the Gen Zs went on the road and the country was going a certain direction, the two gentlemen sat, God knows wherever they sat, and agreed that let's find a way of stabilizing the country. The 10-point agenda, they are coming to sign in March, way, way later. So why are we tying the 10-point agenda to the pre-election coalition agreement?
Saying this is no longer ODM's cap. It's no longer ODM's burden, the 10-point agenda.
The 10-point agenda is everyone's burden. Not ODM. Why do people want to put the 10-point agenda to ODM?
They're the ones who signed the MOU.
Don't DCP want justice?
10-point agenda.
Don't Wiper want justice and things like that? It is everyone's agenda, not just the ODM's agenda. ODM is keen on the 10-point agenda, but why do other people feel like it is ODM's agenda and not Wiper? Why have you not asked Wiper members whether they care about the 10-point agenda?
They did not sign the document. It is between UDA and ODM. Are we saying that this 10-point agenda should be abandoned?
No, the 10-point agenda should not be abandoned. And that is why Gladys Wanga, the chair, was telling the country yesterday that we have to separate these two things. When we are talking about getting justice for the people who got deaths in their families through police bullet, it is something that should be going on. And if we peg it to 7th March, then it means, let's say the way some other people are now calling it, that is the end. Then is that the end of wanting justice for the victims? Is that the end of wanting a balanced government? Will that be the end of wanting everything that is in that arrangement?
Let's take a look at what people are saying even as we continue this conversation here. Guys are sending us feedback on our Facebook X pages, and this is what they're saying. Peter Mwangi says zoning is undemocratic. Parties should allow competition so voters can choose the best leader. That's on the zoning discussion. Beatrice Atieno says without zoning, parties will fight each other and weaken themselves before the main election. That is very true. John Mutua, he says political parties are becoming too powerful. Let the people decide at the ballot. And Masinjeri, zoning only protects powerful politicians who fear competition. Some are scared, eh? We're talking about party strength. And Kevin Ochieng says sometimes zoning is necessary to maintain unity in a party. On X, Brian Kipto, he says internal democracy must be respected. Every aspirant should face voters. Well, he doesn't agree with the zoning. Faith Wambui, also on X, zoning is a political strategy. It avoids unnecessary nomination chaos. And Dennis Otieno says this is how parties kill young leaders before they even start. Thank you so much for your feedback, especially on that debate about zoning. But even as we discuss now this 10-point agenda, there was a lot of talk, but it would appear once Raila Odinga was no longer there, this is just a list that appears a bit too inconvenient for even the protagonists in this coalition building. Don't you agree, Philemon?
To start with, you are signing a 10-point agenda with a person who believes in nothing, a person who will tell you, facing you, nitakuletea gasi ya 300 na anakupatia mpaka ile date gasi ya 300 inakuja, and then it's not going to happen. He comes to Kayole in a church and he tells people, by hii Christmas, hii barabara nimepitia iko na matope, and that is in the month of October. Itakuwa na lami. I don't know how many Christmases later it hasn't happened. If you look at today's daily newspaper, on page 10, it speaks about state to increase debt by 2.2 trillion every year. So it's going to borrow about 5.9 trillion. One of the 10-point agenda, if you look, it was an audit and reduce national debts. That was agenda number 7. So is this how we are reducing national debts? By borrowing an extra 5.9 trillion, 2.2 trillion per year, money that has never been borrowed in the history of this country. So we are borrowing more, and then we are speaking of we are coming to review 10-point agenda. Don't even waste our time and resources. In fact, you media should not cover people coming to lie to us that they are here to review the 10-point agenda. Already, agenda number 7 is not being implemented. In fact, if anything, they are urinating on agenda number 7. They are borrowing more. Look at safeguarding the right to peaceful assembly. We are all aware that Linda Mwananchi had rallies in parts of this country. You saw what happened in Kitengela. That loss of life was unnecessary. Those gunshots, that tear gas, that fighting people who had met to assemble peacefully in Kitengela was unnecessary. The happenings in Kakamega are unnecessary. This administration, the president was in my constituency these 2 days ago. And by the way, have you noticed that every time the president is having political rallies in this country, especially in Nairobi, violence follows him? Why? Because the people who have been mandated by him and they know themselves to mobilize for him are mobilizing goons. I have a video I wish I could share on TV right now. Young people smoking bangi before very senior policemen and saying, tunaivuta mbele ya nani? Those are the people mobilized to the president's function. And after that, they were following people in Nairobi with motorbikes. 2 days ago in my constituency, stealing and robbing from people violently, and the police were watching them. And we have the videos, and nothing has been done about those people. And these people are telling you now, they are protecting the right of the people to assembly. It is an insult to Kenyans to tell us that you want to come and have a review of the 10-point agenda when such things are happening in the sight of Kenyans. If anybody doubts, just search the president's visit to Dagoretti South, see what is happening. Young people smoking bangi in front of very senior policemen and saying, sisi ni watu wa mdosi, sisi leo tumemobiliziwa juu ya president, and there's nothing anybody can do to them. You come and talk of strengthening and protecting devolution, which is agenda number 3. And the president goes to State House. And before public participation, but they have never seen such impunity. The law as it was created was intended that you first do public participation. And then you go and do now your shenanigans. So they start with the Kenya Gazette, which Kenyans do not have access to. They go and come up with an agreement between themselves and Sakaja. They sign it in State House. 2 days later, wamekuja kwetu Waithaka Social Hall. A public participation I had attended. To have a public participation about something that they have already signed at State House. Removing 80 billion from the National Treasury where we have better measures of accountability and taking it to a county that has got no measures of accountability. And then the government goes ahead to insult us even more. Ati wameangalia Kenya mzima, wakaona hakuna watu wanaweza okota garbage. Wakaingia Uganda, wakaingia Tanzania, wakaingia Rwanda, wakaingia Burundi. They've gotten a Ghanaian to come and collect our garbage for us. If that is not an insult to devolution, then what is? Why do we need to have Sakaja in place if we can have Ghanaians collecting garbage for us in this country? Okay. Why don't we just take our garbage to Ghana? They are talking of economic investment in the youth. You saw what was happening with this thing they were calling Nyota. And I told them, you'll bring Nyota, utaleta jua, utaleta mawingu, utaleta everything. But once you're done, let it be remembered. that Nyota program is happening in very many African countries. And there is no other African country where it is happening, where it is the president who is directly involved. And there is no African country where it's happening, where people are being gathered together and being told, atisemeni tutam ndio mpatiwe Nyota program. Finally, raise and manage resources responsibly. Again, please, don't waste our time telling us that you're doing a review of this thing. They come before the floor of Parliament. We are already worried that State House is chewing 48 million a day. They actually come and confess that they are spending 123 million shillings a day. And they look at us in the face and they think we are the ones who are abnormal. How do you say it's 10-point agenda? Agenda number 9 is to manage state resources properly. Yeah. How big is State House that you're spending 123 million shillings in a day?
Right. Bwana Sosion, you must agree that it would appear disingenuous on the part of ODM and UDA, the ones who signed this MOU, to even say that they are reviewing the progress 1 year later, when a lot of those things have not even been moved. Should we even be bothering about this list? Should it even be a basis of discussion going forward?
No, I think, Fred, give ODM and UDA a fair opportunity to do its work, because the agreement they signed was voluntarily entered by the two parties with exclusion of others. So the execution lies within the two parties. And those who didn't want it from the beginning and who don't want it, and like some quarters, the corner of Fanyamambo, they will try to poke holes negatively on every point. But do you want to tell the country that nothing has been done on every point? A lot of work has gone into it. Even if it is borrowing has been done in a manner that is fiscally sustainable and that is properly advised. It did not mean that borrowing was not going to go on. It will. A lot of work has to be done within the development framework of the country. And that is not going to be done without money. It will be done without money. I think it is wrong for us in this show to try and preempt the report of the chair of Dr. Sani. That report will be tabled before members of parliament of the two parties, the joint PG, on Tuesday. And if there are questions to the extent of the concerns of Fanyamambo and others, and you, they will be dealt with at that level. It does not mean that when that MOU was signed, all the 10 points were implemented smoothly and effectively. Some were even frustrated by the courts, like the compensation of victims of violence dating back to 2017. And there are litigants who went to court, and those litigants are from the corner of Fanyamambo.
But I can respond to that.
I'll give an opportunity to respond.
No, you will have that opportunity. But you see, some people work very hard to sabotage progressive efforts of the broad-based government so that they can make political capital out of it. It's not going to work. And so once the report is tabled on Tuesday, that report will be made public. It is not a secret document. It will be available for Kenyans, even for you, and to look at the extent to which it has been done, what has not been done, and what needs to be done. And as the chair of the committee stated, it is not going to end. The 10-point implementation is not going to end on 7th of March.
Be the basis of the coalition building discussion.
It is part of the coalition. It's part of the basis. In fact, it is a binding cement of the two parties. It is a binding element.
When Odede says this should not be a discussion,
it's a binding element.
Coalition building
it's
right
a binding
now. It
element.
is unnecessary.
What brings the relationship of UDA and ODM in terms of functional operations is the 10-point agenda. And it is going to go on beyond elections. Okay. There are very fundamental issues about the governance of the country. And so all must be addressed beyond the parliamentary PG group, beyond the signing of the coalition agreement, and beyond the formation of the next government. It is for the good of the country. It is not an event. It is a process. And these are functional activities that will be implemented over time.
He mentioned something about us having gone to court to fight the victim compensation. That's not true. Why we stopped the process is because I think the AG in this republic has failed the president. Kenya does have a Victim Compensation Act. Kenya does have a Victim Compensation Fund that is provided for in law. What the head of state did, with the advice of Professor Makau Mutua, a respected law lecturer in the whole world, is they went to set up a parallel thing that is outside of the law. And I remember calling Madam Faith Odhiambo, the then president of the Law Society of Kenya, because she was my classmate at Catholic University when we were studying law. And I told her, Madam Faith, how are you finding yourself in a process that is parallel to existing law? If the president was keen on compensating our people, he should have done it within the framework of the Victim Compensation Act, which exists, and a Victim Compensation Fund, which is established. It's actually it's a 2014 law. It's an act of parliament. He was in parliament then when it was passed, 2014. So it is there, and they know it exists, but they refused to do it and jumped into something else because their intention was not to compensate. Finally, on the same, if you go to parliament, and if you check the videos of what happened when our Gen Zs were being killed, we have videos of an enthusiastic policeman kneeling down and aiming at young people. Why do we want to use your money, his money, my money, and Sosion's money to compensate our Gen Zs for the crimes committed by people that are known to us? So the thing is, if you want to compensate, don't do it from our taxes. Yes. In fact, what this government should do is President William Ruto, his policemen, and all those people who were involved, including the then Minister for Interior, who was Professor Kithure Kindiki, should be made to compensate from their own pockets.
Right.
Because then that would stop a situation where public resources are used to cover for the mistakes of state officers.
And the reason why we're discussing this is on the coalition building process and the point, or rather the role that the 10-point agenda will play in that, if at all. What Bwana Sosion says and what you said earlier appear to be in different directions.
Thank you, Fred. Before I come to that, I think it is good to actually take our minds back. When we're talking about compensating victims of police brutality, and Fanyamambo here makes it look to Kenyans that this is a Kindiki and Murkomen's thing because Kenya Kwanza came to power in 2022. Why are we talking about 2017? Why Kindiki, the man in charge of police? Why are we talking about those other years and you're telling us, you're telling Kenyans that we should use Kindiki's money to compensate those when Uhuru was in power, and you know people who are in... Wait,
who is culpable.
Why are you eating? Wait. It is wrong.
It should go back all the way.
It should go back all the way.
Yes.
So when you're mentioning that we should put people like Kindiki to pay and all that...
thing because you're just giving different examples.
No. This is deliberate. What he's doing is deliberate. I come from Luo Nyanza, and we have our club we love so much, Gor Mahia. When they are going to play your team, we start saying, Giniwaseka, meaning this is gone. So by the time we are on the pitch, you're also coming weak knowing this is gone. This is what Fanyamambo and the team are trying to do. When we are talking about issues to do with strengthening devolution, are we not talking about raising the funds to the counties? Is it not something that has been agreed by these two parties? And today we are talking about, I think we're talking about 300 and more than 50 billion added to what was allocated before. This is just part of it. So what we are saying is there could be a possibility that there are still some wrongs happening because nobody has claimed everything is right. But it is wrong to start telling us that these things have just started happening now. State House was spending money even before. State House have been, I think it is only President Kibaki that I didn't see asking delegations to State House. Unfortunately, this started properly during Uhuru's time, when delegation started.
So you agree that this should not be relevant in the coalition discussions, right?
I think it is relevant, but it is not supposed to be the basis for the coalition building. Because if you are talking about this as the basis of the coalition building, what is the basis of the coalition building on the other side? Because they are also building a coalition. Are they building it based on this?
On the basis of what?
What are they building it on? So I am saying this is important to all Kenyans, both across the divide. But when ODM and UDA decide to build a coalition to actually get power.
We're not prescribing for them what they should do. We are asking, what are they doing?
They are building a coalition based on the election that is coming.
All right. Now, and I think you've...
but in Dimuli, there's something we are missing. And this is the point I like to correct him. And many other Kenyans who I see commenting like him online. You know, sometimes you are a Kenyan who has left Kisumu in a bus and you are heading to Mombasa. And when the bus gets to Nairobi, the driver changes, obviously because of fatigue. And they get you a fresh driver to take you on the journey to Mombasa. And then you realize, of course, the other driver had his faults, and there are times you even shouted at him when he was driving. And then you realize that before Mufike Emali, everybody is flashing lights at you, people are hooting at you, the driver is overtaking carelessly, he's speeding on bumps. So you tell him, wait. We will not allow you to continue driving us like this. We are only at Emali and we are going to Mombasa. Then you hear somebody, the passenger sitting with you in the same bus, and you could all crash together and die, telling you, why didn't you ask the driver who got us from Kisumu to here? And you're telling him, look here, we are in a bus that is being driven dangerously to Mombasa. Okay. If I don't talk to this driver, he will crash this bus. So you can't come and keep reminding me that we were in another bus from Kisumu to Nairobi, and that bus was being driven carelessly. And I told you, now we are not in that bus. As we speak right now, the bus that could make us crash and die is the one we are in. Na tuko Emali, na Mombasa ni mbali. Right. So I have to keep speaking to this driver, and I have to keep speaking about how this bus is being driven, because I am inside that bus, and I have left my family, and I have a concern. So you keeping to remind me that kuna basi ilitutoa Kisumu, I know. Kuna basi ilikuwa inaendeshwa vibaya, I know.
No.
But right now,
you are wrong.
We can
wrong
crash
analogy.
and die.
Fred, wrong analogy. Wait, wrong analogy. Because we are not talking about driving the bus. We are talking about carelessly. Actually, reckless. So when you talk about things like debt, for example, Kibaki left us with 1.8 trillion as debt. What did Uhuru leave us with? Why were you not in Kenya that day to talk about carelessly borrowing? You are only awake now because somebody else is in power and borrowing. Okay. And those which were borrowed have done some other things in other parts of the country, which my part of the country has never seen. Okay, now that it is being borrowed to do some other things, where I go for holidays in December and take 20 hours on the road, it is now painful for you.
You wanted to say something.
We are not going to do that.
I think we should be focused as a country and really deal with issues honestly and fairly. This craze of focusing on ODM and trying to poke all the holes and paint it negatively when it's a party that has done tremendously well, and trying to poke on the 10-point agenda as if it is a bad item for the country. It's a good thing for the country. I think we should not promote negative politics that are not in the interest of the state. Even if you're oppositionist, you must be oppositionist who drive issues that are fundamental to the country. You don't just criticize for the sake. We must also turn the music. What are the cementing issues of their coalition? And those issues, are they beneficial to Kenyans? We must see the other side of the mirror. We cannot be looking at one side. And I would say the 10-point agenda is just one item that forms the basis of the coalition building. There are many other elements, the political issues, power sharing. Power must be shared. Mm-hmm. And we must project how you get that power. And power, broad-based, will get it. and they must plan how to execute that power and how to share it. That is a fact.
And they should not be burdened with this 10-point agenda at this point.
No. 10-point agenda is crucial. It's part of government business, part of the coalition business. That is why there will be a progress report. Right. There will be headwinds of implementing, like the corners of Anyamambo who go to Kotini to block implementation of a program, and they give 1,000,001 academic reasons. We are not supposed to bog down the country and stop major things. Families, victims' compensation.
Yes.
These are very poor households. And
because of time, allow us to move on to other headlines as well. Thank you for that. Of course, in 2 days' time, we'll be marking the first anniversary of the 10-point implementation of the 10-point agenda that was signed between ODM and UDA on March 7th last year. And of course, the progress report will also be presented before a joint parliamentary group meeting of the two parties next week. The question is, will this still be a basis of the coalition building between the two parties? Whether that will happen, we'll have to wait and see. On the front page of the Standard, we have the chairperson of the party, ODM party. And the Standard appears to have reintroduced debate around the number 2 position, especially in that coalition, by doing this. I do not know what your views are. Let's start with you, Bwana Odede. Looking at the Standard this morning, because it would appear ODM has moved from the issue of the running mate position for William Ruto next year to issues around zoning. But this paper has effectively reintroduced debate around the number 2 position. Do you think this is still a valid debate right now, or have you moved on, even as a party, from this issue?
The debate around running mate?
Yes, running mate position.
I think running mate of the president is just part of the many positions. But like the party chair has said, we are going to look at government in totality and say when we get there and win that election, and our coalition is the ruling coalition, we need to divide those positions in the middle. So in the middle...
After the election.
After the election. In the middle depends on what positions are available in totality. So I personally think the running mate or not is not supposed to be the big conversation. The big conversation is power, which my party leader talked about. We want power.
How would you define power? Not on the presidential.
One is being in the coalition that wins the election of 2027. Mm-hmm. That is one key thing. Then when you are in, you're looking at this and this and this. What do we want to hold in terms of positions of power in this coalition, and what do the UDA wants to hold? It could be possible that running mate of the president has been agreed to be given to the ODM, or is still on the other side, but other things or other positions that have power. The real thing is power. Okay. So if there are other positions that can compensate that power on this other side of the coalition, then so be it. So for me, running mate or not is neither here nor there.
Yes.
Because again, we know this is a principal assistant to the president. The real person is the president, and then you're given a principal assistant. Just like the governors in the counties, they have deputy governors, but they do not execute much from the office of the deputy governor, although deputy governor still remains a principal assistant to the governor.
The story is basically about Gladys Wanga, the Homa Bay governor, but it reintroduces the push by ODM for the number 2 position, or at least the running mate position heading towards 2027. We've been discussing this coalition building. Do you feel that this probably is out of the way? The Standard is pushing too much a narrative that's already dead?
To start with, the president has already laughed it off. He's already made it very clear. In fact, he asked which power are they looking for. Ni ya comrades ama ni gani? You should listen to his speech in Democratic South. So he doesn't believe that ODM should be getting any power. And ODM is there insisting that they should be getting power from this administration. If the president laughs at you and even tells you natafuta power gani, when they look for the clip, sio mimi ni mdomo yake. What are you busy there endearing yourself to someone who's already telling you he's not going to work with you? But I also come from a region where people kind of believe all the time that, oh, you know, Mount Kenya feels they're entitled to the presidency. And for the first time we are saying, hii kiti ya deputy, sisi tunaomba ipeanwe Nyanza. In fact, hata it's overstayed. Ipeanwe hata kesho. Ipeanwe tu, Oburu apewe hii kiti ya deputy, so that people stop seeing Mount Kenya as these people who are always entitled and feel like they want the presidency in its entirety. I feel the president can appoint somebody from Luo Nyanza as soon as tomorrow morning to occupy the seat of deputy president, so that Mount Kenya is no longer seen as this obstacle to people becoming that powerful. Also, when you talk about this, I worry deeply when I look at ODM. There was a time when ODM stood for certain ideals that we all believed in. You know, when you see a country that is borrowing the way it's borrowing, when you see 800,000 children not reporting to school in good time, when State House is wasting 128 million shillings a day, when a president comes and says watu wapigwe risasi ya mguu, when a UDA legislator says hata hafai kupigwa risasi ya mguu anafaa kuuliwa, when all these kind of things are happening within this administration, and then my good friend here who has been a very progressive young leader, and now I think I want to dissociate myself from him completely, start saying that for them, the only thing that matters is power. It doesn't matter whether it's an administration that is borrowing recklessly, wasting money in State House, killing young people, doing all sorts of terrible things that we are seeing now, including losing 11 billion on eCitizen, and nobody is asking a question. Waking up the other day and Shah has lost money and nobody cares. There is no medicine in hospitals. You go to Kenyatta National Hospital and there is no food at certain point. Patients are lacking food. You look at the newspapers today, publishers are not willing to deliver goods to schools because they are not being paid. No. And then these people, the only thing they want is power. A relationship with power, with a president and a government that is committing these atrocious things. They don't care. ODM stood for certain ideals, and I need to remind him, they were about democracy. They were about good leadership. They were about good governance. ODM has contributed immensely to the democratic space we have now. So they are now working with a government that is shrinking all that, and they are okay with it as long as wanapata power. That is why, for me, I feel that their conversation is misplaced. The conversation needs to go back to where it was. In as much as I want to have a partnership with you, who are you? You know, who are you? And that is why I come from the school of thought that says, this president is not fit to go for another term. Okay. What the conversation we should be having around is, which other replacement can we have? A person who will undo all these things that they have done. Right. You wake up, there is Shah, which is a scam. You wake up, there is university funding model. He's been in the teaching profession, he can tell you. That university funding model is funny, to say the least. Where twins come together, they apply. One is put in band 1, one is put in band 4, and they field the same parents. You look at all these things and you say, wait a minute. If it is just power for the sake of power, I wouldn't go for it if I am working with this administration.
Right. We only have about 6 minutes left, so final comments now.
I think I find Fanyamambo is so obsessed with discussing not even the institution of the presidency, but the person of the president, and trying to assign negative data that is not accurate. I don't think that is how we should do politics in Kenya. We should be honest and issue-based. When we talk about the education sector, and I participated in drafting the charter, you all know that when the president took over, many universities were collapsing. Now they're coming back to life. The funding model, of course, it has challenges. But if you pick 1 or 2 challenges and you don't tell us the 9 strong points, I don't think you are giving Kenyans the right information. Many issues in the basic education, including a curriculum that was so confused, has been realigned very largely through extensive and intensive reviews, up to and including reducing the scope of content for purposes of implementability, hiring of more teachers, and making the sector work. A lot of things are working. And Fanyamambo trying to advise the president to quickly pick a deputy from ODM and is being mischievous. Picking a deputy president is not something we can discuss in a show like this, and it's not something that can be casually discussed elsewhere. And let me tell you, the deputy presidency of the coalition is not going to break the broad-based arrangement. And some have even said Kindiki can as well be a member of ODM and represent ODM in that arrangement, which can work. So it doesn't matter. Anybody within the broad-based can be appointed to any position, and it is preemptive to try and use it to trigger divisions. There will be reasonable parameters and points of agreement within the coalition, including power sharing, and that will not be limited to any position. Right. It will also include endorsement of a presidential candidate. It will also include endorsement of the deputy president. It will include a clear agreement on the outlook of sharing of positions within government, which have been done even at the moment. Right. So I don't think Fanyamambo Kinuthia and team will continue with that narrative of the hyena waiting for the hand to drop, and it will never drop. Okay. The broad-based coalition will remain strong. It will have working frameworks, and it will win 2027 elections. Whether you don't like William Ruto or not,
you go next. Final comments.
Continue as president.
The NDC of the ODM party coming up later this month. A lot of discussion centered on that, but is it time for Sifuna to exit ODM?
Let me come to that as the final point, but I want this to go on record. I like what Fanyamambo is doing. He is telling the country that ODM is the party that has stood for ideal things that Kenyans love. The question is, why have all Kenyans not been part of ODM? Why have they not been in ODM as members? Because it seems that on the opposite side, they have seen ODM as the party that has stood for a long time for Kenyans. Unfortunately, Kenyans have not given ODM power. So if he says ODM have contributed immensely to justice, all these beautiful things, the only thing ODM has not gotten is power. That's what we are going for. That's why we must just talk about power. We have contributed to justice, you have said. We have contributed to democracy, you have accepted. We have contributed to everything else. But have you people contributed to getting ODM to power? No. That is why ODM must now go for power, so that where I come from in Migori, we might not continue to fight for every greater ideal when we are only getting 400 million in the budget for all our roads in Migori. At least when we have power, we have now 2.3 billion for all our roads in Migori. We are going for power. Thank you. So coming to that, NDC of ODM only happens 1 in 5 years. Sifuna and group knows all this. They were given position of SG in 2018. They had to wait until 2021 for NDC to happen to confirm them officially, and he was elected unopposed in the NDC 2021. We don't understand why in 3 months Oburu is given opportunity to lead the party by the party structures, and then there is all of a sudden wailing and moaning about NDC as if the 5 years had gone. This is the 5th year, and I'm glad 27th of March it is happening. I do not think Sifuna, Babu and the group should leave ODM. I think they should go to that NDC. They should appeal to the members of the delegates of ODM to give them the positions they want in this party. Because there is no need going to court when you have not finished the dispute resolution mechanism within the party. I think the court is going to send them back to the party. Okay. And probably, if they have decided before all this that they wanted to leave ODM, then they should not even go to the NDC. They should have left ODM way before, and because the NDC will wrap everything and it will be embarrassing.
Okay. Finally, Bwana Kinuthia, final comment.
I think for me, Sifuna, Babu Owino represent what Baba stood for. And then we have a few others there who don't represent what Baba stood for. And they are worried that they see the spirit of Baba in Sifuna and Babu Owino, and you can't take it away. When you look at ODM, you can see where the spirit of Baba is, and then you can see where the brokers are. And I continue to say that removing Sifuna from ODM or removing Babu from ODM does not take away the love that Kenyans have for them, home and abroad. And all I can say is, If you take a seed and you bury it, especially in this rain, it's going to germinate. Umesikia Wakenya wakisema hao ndio Sifuna. He wakes up in the morning and people are printing t-shirts and bringing him to his office and telling him vaa hii, and people are contributing their own money. He's tried setting up a pay bill 3 times and he's been frustrated. And Kenyans are saying fungua tu hivi tukuwekee pesa. So I can tell you that this is not Morara. This is
the
Sifuna.
first time.
So all I'm trying to say is this. Kicking out Sifuna from ODM will be counterproductive for them. Okay. And even if they do, Kenyans align not with just Sifuna, it's what he stands for. But if Sifuna starts saying two-term here in broad-based, Kenyans will not align with him. He just needs to stand for the ideals that ODM has always stood for. And Kenyans will be with him to the end.
Right. And interestingly, the story on the front page of the Star talks about the two gentlemen, Sifuna and Babu. And apparently, according to this story, they are leading the Senate and governor contest in Nairobi. Babu Owino, in as far as the gubernatorial race, 42% against the second person who's Sakaja, the incumbent, 17.6%. Meanwhile, Sifuna is still the most popular person to occupy the Senate position for Nairobi.
Aliletewa Jalas.
Well, according to this paper, Jalas comes a distant second or a third. Thank you so much, Mesha Kodede, social and political commentator, Fanyamambu Kinothi, a lawyer and also a political commentator, and Mwalimu Wilson Sosion. Allow me to acknowledge you, Mwalimu, and once again congratulate you for the court win and registration back on the TSC list, and we wish you all the best. And the KNUT elections coming in April. So that has been State of the Nation, a look at the headlines. After the break, we'll be switching gears and talking about matters health, and it's a very interesting conversation. Anodida will be here with an expert. Good morning.